2, 3. What's going on, traders? Today's video tutorial is going to look at indicators on indicators. Let's hop right to it. This is a chart of Meta platforms, ticker Meta, M-E-T-A. It is a daily chart. You can see these candlesticks here. Each candlestick represents a day of trading for Meta. And we're going to get started by adding an indicator to our chart. As you know, you can type in any indicator that comes to mind. In this case, we're going to add a moving average to the chart. Now we see here it's a simple moving average, so we click and the moving average has been added. For a second here, let's customize this moving average. Why don't we make it a certain color that we just can't miss? Because what we are about to do, and let's also make it a 20-day moving average. By the way, we say 20-day moving average because the length is 20 and it's a daily chart. Thus, it is the moving average over the last 20 days. So now we've got a 20-day moving average. Did you know we can add an indicator to this moving average? Let's examine the relevancy of this indicator. Let's look into the validity of this indicator. We right-click, and there's a button here that says Add Indicator/Strategy on SMA. It's a simple moving average. Let's go ahead and click, and now we can search for another indicator. In this example, we are going to search for an indicator card called Bollinger Bands, but please remember you can add any indicator that you want, even community scripts. Just go ahead, search it, and click. So here's Bollinger Bands. We click again, and now Bollinger Bands have been added to our chart. However, these Bollinger Bands are not Bollinger Bands based on price. They are being calculated based on this simple moving average. So how cool is that? As you probably know about Bollinger Bands, they often are a representation of sort of oversold and overbought because standard deviations. The bands, these blue bands here, one on the bottom, one on the top, is measuring the standard deviation of whatever it is that you are calculating. So watch the difference here if we add, let's actually, first of all, hide these Bollinger Bands. Now let's add an indicator. Let's add the same indicator, Bollinger Bands, without calculating it based on the moving average. And what you see here are Bollinger Bands that are specifically calculated based on price. The top here is 2 standard deviations away from the average price of your choosing. The bottom here is 2 standard deviations away to the downside. So you can suddenly see the difference, because we are calculating an indicator on an indicator. So this Bollinger Bands here is an indicator on an indicator. Why does that matter? The reason why that matters is you can check the validity of the indicators that you're using to get a sense of where they're at. For example, you'll notice that this moving average is currently at its 2 standard deviation band at the top here. That could either mean that momentum is aggressively beginning, or perhaps that it is getting a little euphoric and overbought. You can zoom out and then you can see for yourself, is this a signal that you want to follow? Actually, what's rather interesting by doing this indicator on indicator, you might see that for this entire period of time, this whole entire uptrend, the moving average, which if you recall is this sort of fuchsia pink line here, has always stayed near the top of the Bollinger Band when calculated as such, and thus you could maybe make an observation that the same thing is happening, and maybe this is the start of an uptrend of sorts. So long story short, there's almost a copy and paste this moment from here to there, and don't forget, you could, if you wanted to, actually perform such analysis as you need. But the point being is that if you are calculating indicators on indicators, the key here is that you have the capability to research and fact check and look into the very indicators that you're using and get some additional data on them to see how relevant they are or how they compare to other points in time by calculating such data based on other indicators. What we just did there is we copy and pasted bars patterns because, as we had mentioned, the moving average is up here near its top of its Bollinger Band. The same thing may be happening again. So if you assume that that is repeating, well, you might be setting up for a rather bullish move. long story short, this is how you do indicators on indicators. This is just an example for you to work through. You can really do this any way that you please, and it's really endless. And one of the more interesting ways you can also do this is with fundamental metrics. So what we're going to do is we're going to hide this. We're going to open up our indicators. We're going to go to financials. Now let's go ahead and add revenue quarterly. Now we've got revenue here, which is an indicator. But have you ever asked yourself, what is the moving average of this revenue? So we can see what Meta Platforms has earned each quarter, but what if we right-clicked, add an indicator? Why don't we use another moving average? And let's see, moving average simple. And now we've got a moving average on this fundamental indicator. We can have our own length involved. Let's just change it to 20 as that's what we've been using. We can have our own style involved so that it looks different than sort of what we're... Let's actually change this to 5 because in this case it's going to be more of a quarterly period. And let's click OK. And how cool is that? You have this red line is a moving average that is based on Facebook's or Meta Platforms' quarterly revenue. And at this point in time, based on the moving average over the last 5 periods, actually Meta is outperforming its average because the blue line is what was really reported and the red line is the average over the last 5 periods. So this is something that you can do for any indicator. It's called indicators on indicators. It might take some time for you to get familiar with it. We've walked you through the concept of using moving averages to do an indicator on an indicator. We've also shown you fundamental metrics. It's now really in your hands to dive in and try anything that you so please. Go ahead and go to technicals, scroll through it all, and you just may find the perfect new strategy for yourself. Thanks so much for watching. We hope this indicator on indicator video helps you, and we look forward to hearing your questions and comments.